Hello everyone, welcome to today's lab session. So in this lab session, we'll be on databases, and what I'm going to do in this lab is to launch an RDS database instance with high availability. So I'm looking at a multi-AZ kind of deployment, and I'll also configure the database instance to permit connections from a web server, right? And I'll as well open a web application and then interact with my database. Great. So let me just get into it. So first thing, what I'm going to do is to create a security group. Okay, that will permit access from my web security group. So I'm basically going to create a security group that will allow my web server to access my RDS database instance. Okay, so I'll head to VPC. And from here, I'll scroll down and search for security groups. So this is security groups. I'll select security groups. And from security groups, I'll create a new security group. But before that, let us appreciate the web security group that I'll permit access from. So this is the web security group, and then I can click on the security group ID to look at the inbound rules. So the inbound rules for this web security group is what allow SSH and as well as allow HTTP traffic. Great. So let me go back to my security groups and create a new security group. So for here, I will say DBSG. Okay, that's this. So database security group, and then this will allow access from my web SG, okay, my web security group. So for the VPC, there's a VPC that has already been created. So to appreciate VPCs, you can also check out my previous video on VPCs, right, and subnets. Okay, so I'll select lab VPC. This is the VPC that I want to use, and then I'll add the rule. So the rule is to allow my SQL. So the type is what my SQL Aurora, and then it's from port range 3306. And for the source, I'll just search for SG, and then I'll select the web security group. Super. So once that is done, I can just go ahead and then click on create. So now what I'm going to do next is to create a database subnet group that is used to tell the RDS instance, right, which subnet can be used for the database. So, and each subnet will require at least 2 availability zone, right? So each subnet group is going to require at least subnets being at least 2 availability zones. So I'll go to my home page and then select RDS. I could have just also used the search option, right? I could have just used the search option to do that, or just navigate through services and then go for RDS. But since I have it here, I'll just click on RDS. And for RDS, I'll first go to subnet groups. Okay, so I'll select subnet groups, and then I'll create a DB subnet group. So for the name, I will name it DB subnet group. Great. And for the description, I will say the same thing, DB subnet group. Great. And then for the VPC, the same VPC as our security group, so lab VPC. And here for availability zone, I will select the first 2, so US East 1A and then US East 1B, just like that. Okay, and then for subnet, I am going to choose for this, let me see, no, I'll choose this one. So this one, and I'll also look at this. Okay, so we'll go into the subnet to also appreciate what we have. We'll appreciate these subnets. Okay, so let's also take notice of that. So the one with the CIDR 10.0.1.0/24 and then the 10.0.3.0/24. okay, so now that I've selected my subnets, let me just create. So I've created my subnet group. So let me edit the name. It should be DB, but I think I made it DH instead of DB. So I can just okay, I think I can't change the name, but I can just, okay, great, and then save. That is fine. I was supposed to type DB, but it was DH, so that is fine. Or I can just go ahead and then delete it and then create it again. Okay, so let's create a new one, and then this time DB subnet group. Okay, and then this DB subnet group. The VPC is lab VPC. The availability zone is these two availability zones, and then the subnet is the second one, and then the fourth one here. Okay, once that is done, I will create it. Awesome. So I want us to appreciate the subnets that we use. So I'll open this one and open the second one as well. Great. I just want us to appreciate the subnets that we chose for the subnet group, just to understand why we chose those ones. Okay, so it was in our private subnet. So as we know, when you are creating a database instance, or when you are creating a database, the database is best that you put your database itself into a private subnet, right? Just to make sure that it is safe. So we put the database or our subnet group. The subnet group is the what's it called? The two subnets that we have in the lab VPC, the two private subnet that we have in the lab VPC. So this is the private subnet 2. As I know, I didn't take you through the process of creating the subnet, but I just want you to appreciate, because we only had the subnet ID, so you might not know which one. So the private subnet 1 in the availability zone 1, and then private subnet 2 in the availability zone 2. So that is what I wanted you to appreciate. So great. So we have that set. Great. And then the next one is to create the RDS DB instance, the Amazon RDS DB instance. And then, as I said, for high availability, we are going to configure a multi-AZ RDS, right, for my SQL database. Great. So I'll also search here and then search database. Okay, I think we are already in the RDS page, right? So I'll just go to databases. I totally forgot I was searching database as a service. Great. And then I'll click on create database. Awesome. So I'll use the standard creates in just to have, so, and then I'll choose my SQL, right? I'll choose my SQL for this. There are two ways of, creating your database. You can either use the easy create. Okay. So this is the easy create, where you specify some stuff, or you can just use the standard create. Okay. That'll also, there's just a few difference in it, but let's just use the standard create. And we have my SQL. What again? The version, will leave it as it is. And for template, we'll use a dev test environment. Okay. And then for availability and then durability, I'll choose multi-AZ DB instance. Now for settings, I'll change this name to lab DB. And then for master username, instead of admin, I'll just do I think I can just leave it at admin. Okay, I wanted to change the name, but let me just leave it as it is. Great. For password, let me just make it lab. No, I'll just type password for that. So for password, okay, right. And then to confirm the password, I'll just type it again. Awesome. Let me just make sure that I've typed the right thing, so I'll type them all over again. Great. And for the instance class, I will choose what? Bestable classes, right? So the bestable classes, more or less, even though we don't manage storage, but it will kind of increase it as and when I put more data, right? So for storage type, I'll leave it as general purpose. And then for allocated storage, I'll start with 20 GB. Okay, great. Now I think I'm done. I'm done with storage. For storage auto scaling, I'll leave it as it is because we don't manage it. Okay. Or these RDS, we should also remember that RDS is what is a managed service. So we'll leave it as it is. And then under connectivity, I will just come and change this one to lab VPC. Okay. And what else? Yes, for the DB subnet group is already selected since I said, all right. So the DBs for DB subnet group, yes, the subnet group that I selected is here. Awesome. And let me scroll down to see if great. So I'll leave also everything as it is, and then I'll come to the existing, and then I'll remove the defaults, come here, and then I'll select the DB security group that I created. Okay, right. So I have for the existing VPC security group, I'll choose what the DB security group that I created. Okay. And then let me explore. Are we good? I'm just trying to make sure. So let me go to additional configuration. And here, okay, so after selecting the security group, I'll leave everything as it is, scroll down, and then come to additional configuration. So for additional configuration, my initial database name, I'll just leave it at lab. I'll uncheck automatic backups. I'll uncheck enable encryption, and then I think I am good to go, right? No automated backups. automated backups, encryption, maintenance. Okay, I'll leave this as it is. For monitoring, I think I have to search for backups. Oh, this. Yes, so I'll disable enhanced monitoring as well. Okay, so now that I'm done, I'll just create my database. I'll close this. So I'll wait for my database to be created, right? I can close this as well. Let me refresh. So my database is in the creating state. Okay, so let me pause the video and then wait for it to be created, and then we'll continue. Yeah, so while we are waiting, I would also want to add that the database is being created in multiple AZs, right? So it will take some time. I can click on the database link here for us to look at certain things. So the application, or the database instance is being deployed in a multi-AZ, so it takes a couple amounts of time, approximately 4 minutes, right, for the whole deployment to be ready. Okay, so now I think the status is modifying, so I think it's just about to finish, but we can look at some information about our database instance. Okay, so for example, see we have our endpoint field here, right? It's a link. The VPC that is attached to is the lab VPC, and then we are looking at it at the US East 1B availability zone, the security group that is attached to it, and this security group also allows traffic from the web security group. Okay, and then the web security groups allow the SSH and then HTTP traffic. And yes, the subnet group that our DB is into or has been launched into is what's the DB subnet group, and they are the two subnet groups, which is a private subnet 1 and then private subnet 2 in both availability zones. Great. So I think we are done, or we have a little info. So now we would want to interact with the database. Okay, would want to interact with the database, but then we'll need some info about our web server, and then I'm doing this from a lab exercise. So what I would do is that I would go to my lab exercise window. So now I will have to interact with my web server. Alright, so what I'll do is that I have my web server IP address. So I'll just open a new tab and then paste it. Okay. And you can see that I have some metadata about my web server. Okay. So you might wonder where I got it. I'm doing this from a lab exercise too. So yes, I got the web address from the lab exercise. Okay. Great. So now it is time to interact with my database. Okay, so what I will do is that I'll paste my web address here, my web server IP address here, and then I'll be able to see some metadata about my database. Okay, and then yeah, so you might ask where I got the IP address. We'll address that in another video, but I'll also go to RDS, and then for endpoint I'll come here. This is my endpoint address. Okay, copy this and then paste it here. So for the database is lab, the username is admin, and then I'll enter my password. Super. And then I'll choose submit. So I'll have to wait for some few seconds, and then I can see my database is opened, right? So and then it is displaying an address book. So what I can do is I can add an information, right? So I can add a new information like add contact. So first name Isaac, okay, so my last name and then my first name. Okay, and phone, let me say email. So this email, and then I can submit. Okay, so you can see that the name has been added to my database. Okay, I can decide to edit some few information here. So instead of Roberto, I will leave it at Robert. Submit. Great. And then I can also remove a record. Okay, and then it's done. So that is how awesome RDS is. So there is a table that has been created already, and then I can do my input and then all that. Okay, so that's basically about this lab exercise on database, right? As to how to launch a database and how do I put it? Yeah, so how to launch an RDS. RDS is a managed database service. How to launch an RDS, put it in a VPC. So maybe in the next video or in another detailed video, what I will do is that we'll start from the VPC level. So create a VPC, create our subnets, and then we'll now create a security group and then attach it to the VPC. We'll now create another security group that will allow traffic from the first security group, and then now we'll create our subnet group, and then as well as now come back to create our database. So that is basically about it. I'll see you in another video.